Most people say they want to heal, but what if they're actually clinging to the very thing that's keeping them stuck? In this clip taken from episode 7, titled, "Do You Really Want to Get Better?" I talk about why staying broken sometimes feels safer than actually getting better. Let's take a look. I hope you enjoy. Most people are trying to get better. They say they want to find healing for themselves, but there are few who really are prepared to endure or go through what it's going to take to get to that point where they're actually able to change. And part of that issue is because healing requires a death of the self. It's an uncomfortable process that you can go through. There's going to be something that's uncomfortable about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be painful as far as physicality is concerned, but there's going to be some point that you come across where it is uncomfortable because you're having to change who you are, who you've created yourself to be up until this point in time, and that can be a little bit of a difficult process. There's also the fact that there are silent payoffs to staying broken, if you will, to allowing yourself to stay in that situation or place that you find yourself in because it is familiar. You've built an identity around it. Sometimes it can garner attention depending on, what that situation is, because if you're telling people about your problems and they're feeling sorry for you, that can kind of feel good in a sense and make you feel like maybe you're making progress when really all you're doing is feeding whatever that underlying emotional turmoil might be in your life. So I think what we need to do is ask the deeper question, and it's not can I get better, but it's, am I really truly willing to change? Am I willing to do what's necessary to see a change in my life? And if we can get to that point, if you can get yourself to that place, and I think you can make a change in your life. I think you can get to the point where you can overcome whatever it is that you're dealing with. You can learn how to overcome yourself, because a lot of times the things that we're dealing with are internal. We think that they're external, but most of the time, whatever you're dealing with is an internal issue that you need to get over. And so it's essentially learning how to get over yourself, get over that internal issue, get over those self-limiting beliefs that you have. There's this kind of idea that you might have of this illusion of wanting healing, of getting better. But the truth is that people, they say they want to get better, but they're secretly clinging to the dysfunction of their life because they don't know who they are without that dysfunction. Life doesn't feel right, if you will, air quotes here. Life doesn't feel right if you are not living in that state. If you're constantly, and I use anger a lot because it's something that everybody's familiar with, but let's just say that you're constantly in a state of anger. If you're no longer wanting to be in that state of anger and you're trying to be in a state of peace instead, being in that state of peace can be very difficult because it's unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable to be in that state of peace because you don't know what it's like to be a peaceful person. You're so used to being angry that you've created this baseline around anger that when you shift over to becoming a peaceful person, it can be very difficult to stay in that place because you haven't generated or cultivated the lifestyle around it. You've generated and cultivated the lifestyle around anger instead. So if you want to change your life, you have to understand that you're going to go through this process. There's going to be these stages or processes that you go through where you just feel like you're out of your normal comfort zone because you are working towards becoming the person that you want to be and trying to leave behind this old person that you no longer want to be anymore. And that can be a little bit of a challenge. You can start to develop these limiting beliefs, these emotional dependencies, if you will, on the various pain that you're dealing with in your life, the limitations that you put on yourself. You start to just see yourself as this person. You create an identity around this issue that you're dealing with in life, and that identity starts to solidify. And when you go to change and move into a different direction, your brain is saying, hey, hold on a second. What are you doing? This isn't who you are. This isn't where you're supposed to be heading. You are this person. You're this angry person, a depressed person, a jealous person. You're full of resentment or bitterness. Whatever it is that you're dealing with. You don't believe in yourself. You have a self-limiting belief about who you are, and because you can't rise above that, you can't get to the point that you want to in life. And so when you start to try to rise above it, your brain's going, hold on, no, that's not you. Remember all these things that you did in the past that made you believe that you were this limited person? That's why you are where you are. You can't rise above that. That's not you. And so you have these different battles that you go through in your mind and your body, your thoughts and your feelings are battling each other, and that can make it difficult to get to the point that you want to get to. So if your identity is built around brokenness or the set of limiting beliefs, these ideas that you're not good enough, or you're just this angry person and you can't be peaceful, you're a jealous person and you can't be, joyful or generous, or whatever the situation is, whatever it is that you've created for yourself, you have to get to the point where you understand that healing requires you to let go of that identity. Healing requires you to release that hold that you have and allow yourself to move forward so you can get to the place that you want to be in life. It's not always something that's easy to do, but it can be done. It's just you have to understand that you can do that. You can get to that place. I think a lot of times people get stuck where they are in life because they think that they don't have what it takes. They don't think it's possible. They don't think that they can actually make that change that they're trying to make. And so they'll get to a certain point, they'll hit a wall, they'll hit a barrier, and what ends up happening is you just start to give up. It starts to become difficult, and because it's difficult, you say, well, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I don't have what it takes to actually push through and get to the place that I want to be in life. Maybe I can't make these changes. But that's not the truth. The truth is you can make those changes. The truth is you can radically change your life if you want to. You can. Millions of people have done it all around the world, across the ages. People have transformed their lives drastically in major ways. In ways where if you saw them at the beginning, by the time you saw them at the end, you wouldn't know that that was the same person. Because they made such a huge transformation along the way that they're no longer recognizable as that old person holding that old belief system that they used to hold. Now they're this new person. They're stronger. They're more wise, mature. It seems like they have things together. They're successful. So it's not that you can't do it. It's are you willing to do it? Are you willing to go in and do what's necessary to get to that place? When it comes down to it and you're trying to get through those difficult things, usually what happens is you would rather manage the symptoms of whatever it is that you're going through rather than face the root causes, rather than deal with the root issues of whatever's going on. And I'm not necessarily talking about going in and always going deep into the issue and, well, it started here and it was this reason and this thing happened. It's not necessarily always doing that. I mean, sometimes that can be beneficial, but I don't necessarily think that that has to be the way that you have to go all the time. But it's being willing to understand and face yourself and say, this is what's going on in my life right now. For me, I'll just tell you a little bit, it was depression. Major depression. I almost killed myself 3 times. It was so bad. It was so miserable. That's how deep and dark the depression was. But instead of facing that, really facing it, really owning up to it, allowing myself to essentially, think about the idea of staring yourself in the mirror and just saying, you're depressed. Instead of doing that, instead of just going in, Josiah, you're depressed. You need to get over yourself. This is something that's holding you back in life. I didn't do that. I blamed everything else that I could. Everybody except for me, I would blame. You can't do that if you want to change your life. If you want to get past where you are, you have to start to take ownership of how you think and how you feel. Nobody can make you think the way that you're thinking right now in a long-term pattern or process. They may have started that thought. They may have planted the seeds for it, but you're the one who has been propagating that over time. The way that you feel. Nobody can make you feel a specific way unless you let them. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around that because we are such feeling and emotional creatures that whenever somebody says something or does something that hurts us, it's easy to take offense. And we're not taught at a young age that, hey, you don't have to feel this way. You don't have to believe that. Just because somebody says this thing about you, you don't have to accept that as an identity. You don't have to take that on and believe it to be true for yourself. And so a lot of people have issues with that. They struggle with that. You think that because this person says something about you, that maybe it's true. When in reality, it could be very far from the truth. On the other hand, it might be very close to the truth, but it doesn't mean that you have to accept it. It doesn't mean that you can't change, that you can't move on. As you go through this process, you have to realize that there has to be a death of the old self. The old self has to die, whatever that is. Again, if we use that idea of anger, if you are struggling with anger or you're an angry person, that identity that you have has to die. It has to move into this other identity that you're looking for or trying to go for. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, be open to the idea that, hey, if this is my identity right now, and this is the identity that is not serving me, it's holding me back in life, I'm not able to move beyond a certain phase, a certain place, I feel stuck where I am, I have all these hopes and dreams and aspirations, and I can't seem to achieve them or live them out because of all these negative beliefs that I have, these limiting beliefs that I have. You have to be willing to get to that point where, like, well, this identity isn't serving me, though. I need to be able to let this go and start to embrace the identity of the person that I want to become. When you do this, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to 100% become that person that you want to become. Just think about it like this. If you want to become one of the most well-known actors or musicians of our time, there are not very many people who reach that state. It's not because they don't have what it takes. It's not because they're not trying. It's just life. Life happens. Other people rise up and take that spot instead for innumerable reasons. There's so many different reasons that, one person might rise higher than another. But it doesn't mean that people who are not at that level are not thoroughly enjoying their lives regardless. So it doesn't mean that just because I have this dream and I'm going to be the, we'll use the actor and musician again. I'm going to be the top actor, actress, the top musician. It doesn't mean that you're always going to get to that place, but you can elevate yourself out of wherever you are now to get to a state where maybe you are a well-known musician, a well-known actor, and your life could be 100% better because of that. But as you go through the process, you start to go through that whole transformation stage. It's essentially you are going to be annihilating that old self, that old identity of who you were, in order to take on that new identity that you want to become. As you do this, there might be a sense of grief that you feel. It's a sense of loss, of losing something that you once knew and loved, who used to be you, that is you. And so you can go through that process. And I think that's a lot of times some of the hard part of change is you feel like you are losing a part of who you are. But because you've held on to it, you've created that identity around it. Again, if we go back to that, you've created that identity around who you are, and letting go of that is in itself a death. And whenever we experience death in life, there's a grieving process that comes with it. And I think a lot of times, it's getting to that point of change or overcoming yourself can be difficult because you don't want to let go because there's that grieving process that's going to happen. And that isn't always comfortable. It isn't always something that you necessarily want to go through. You have these thoughts, these ideas, well, if I'm not that person, then who am I? I did an episode on this a while ago. Who do you want to become? Understanding that if you are going to make this change, you have to get to the point where you understand who you're going to become. You have to get to that point where you say, this is the person that I'm aiming for. Okay, now that I know who I'm aiming for, I'm going to be able to let go of this identity that I've created for myself. And now I'm going to be able to move over here and start going towards that identity that I am creating for myself. Thank you for taking the time to watch or listen. If you enjoyed this clip, you can check out the next one in the series by selecting the video here on the left, or if you'd rather dive into the full episode, you can select the video here on the right. Lastly, don't forget to like this video, leave me a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel to be notified of future videos. I hope you have a great day. I can't wait to see you again in the next one.